In August of 2021, I covered the early access launch of Dread Templar. It was some of the most fun I had ever had with an awesome soundtrack, so I've been silently excited for the full launch. Excitement can lead to disappointment, but does this look disappointing to you? Hell no it doesn't, this is just as fun as I thought it'd be. Hey, JarekTheGamingDragon here. A couple of weeks ago, I got approached by Fulcrum, the publisher behind Dread Templar. They basically said, here's a code for the full game, we'll pay you to make a video of it, embargo lifts this day, have fun. I can't stress how unusual this is for a sponsor, in a good way. Sponsors will always have a bunch of bullet points or things they want you to cover. There's some narrative to the marketing push. This has quite literally nothing. Everything I am saying here is of my own opinion as usual. The fact that they're willing to just toss money at a YouTuber, not even want a draft approved, tells me they're very confident in their game, and they have good reason to be. So full disclosure, this video is sponsored, but opinions are of my own and they haven't told me to say anything. Also, that early access video was not sponsored and I really enjoyed it. So again, my own opinions. That early access launch only had about half of the game and was missing basic things like a story. Well, the full release is coming out tomorrow as of this video and about doubles its length. According to Steam, it took me roughly 10 hours to beat the game. Dread Templar now has fairly basic cutscenes. They're not anything revolutionary, but they do give you a good backstory and give you an idea of what's going on. It gives you the history of the protagonist and a clear antagonist. I'm not going to claim it's revolutionary storytelling, but it is nice to have context compared to being completely confused in the early access launch. More importantly, this game does a fantastic job with atmospheric world building. I find a lot of boomer shooters fixate so heavily on combat that they almost entirely forget about this aspect. Hell, the boomer shooters I remember most have me asking questions about the world I'm in. In the case of Cultic, what is going on in this cult? What is the paranormal activity? In the case of Incision, what is any of this? In the case of Dread Templar, why is there a ship? Why is there a pirate ghost? Why is this area so cold? Is it normally like this? What's with the blood moon? Who are these ghost librarians? Huh, this area looks familiar. I wonder where they got the idea for this location. Okay, it's most likely a coincidence, but maybe. Dread Templar even goes a step further. There are secrets all over the map. Usually these are very small, you just find ammo in a corner somewhere. I am awful at finding these as a reminder, but occasionally you're going to be finding super secrets. For example, here I jumped down this well and found a little girl. She is alone, scared, seems to have lost someone or something. The village is completely under siege by demons. She mentions that thing or person is lost far away by a river. I've been by that river, let's search over there. Not only is there a world to inhabit, but you're encouraged to explore it. And on top of all of this, the music fits so well, it is so good. Those three samples are from the same song. I've asked the devs if they're going to be putting this out on Spotify or somewhere. They said they don't really plan on it, but they might. I really hope they do. I would really encourage them to. The soundtrack is so good. This is one of those games where people make jokes about the soundtrack coming with a game. Anyway, I talked about the soundtrack in the early access launch as well. I didn't know who the composer was, and he left a comment. I asked what his Twitter was, and apparently we already followed each other. Anyway, John S. Weekly is the composer, makes fantastic stuff. This is definitely a soundtrack I'll be listening to more than actually playing the game, which is saying a lot because I really like the game. The music tends to have energy through rhythm. A lot of it sounds like riffs you would hear in a Slayer song or 80s thrash metal. This is right up my alley. Update: the day after I recorded this voiceover, the composer tweeted out that he's going to be posting the full soundtrack to his Bandcamp the day the game comes out. so I'll put a link down below in the video information to that. And thankfully, this energy from the music matches the energy in the gameplay. I find that a lot of boomer shooters have enemies that just kind of blindly run at you. You don't really need to prioritize one or the other. Thankfully, this is not the case in Dread Templar. You do have basic enemies that will run at you, however, even those mix up what they do. Some of them may even have shields that block explosives. There will be enemies in the distance that fire effectively wraith shots at you. There are enemies that will float off in the distance firing projectiles of all different kinds. There are enemies that will spawn other enemies. They're not as devious as the Archvile, but you do want to prioritize those a little more. The enemy variety constantly keeps your mind going, which is something you desperately need in a game like this. If you don't have this, you're just kind of mindlessly clicking on your mouse and eventually you get bored. The weapons are just as varied. You get close range powerhouses to weapons that can basically snipe to everything in between. Some of them even have a cooldown. For example, these throwable katanas are on cooldown, so is your bow and arrow. Now, I already covered most of the weapons in the early access video, so I won't go over all of them again. But you do get a few new weapons, like for example, another rocket launcher that fires 3 instead of 1. This is more for crowd control, but this is very important, keep that in your head. I never found that pickups were a problem. I always found that there was the perfect amount of ammo on the map for how much ammo I had. I was never using one gun over everything else. I was forced to swap, but not in a way that was unintuitive. The same can be said for the health and armor. And there's also no quick saving in this game, instead you have save points, but these are everywhere, so you never lose that much progress. Weapon combos and quick swapping are certainly a thing in this game. You're never forced to do it, but you are encouraged. I wanted to see how much damage I could do at any given time. The combo that I use the most often in early access I still use now, that's a simple double barrel shotgun swap back and forth. This does so much damage up close. And it's even encouraged, because one of the upgrades will have that regular shotgun shot do more damage if you shoot an enemy with a double barrel beforehand. Weapons are split into categories, so if you press 3, you pull out the shotgun, if you press 3 again, you pull out the double barrel. If you right click, you'll swap in between the two. So swapping quickly between weapons is very much so a mechanic in the game. And it is intentional, but not forced. Some of the most basic combos can be incredibly devastating. Remember that new rocket launcher? Just swapping back and forth between these two rocket launchers is insane. That never gets old. And then when you start adding in all these different weapons together, that's really when the game clicks. Thankfully, this game does more than just see how much DPS you can do, because that would get old rather quick. The map designs themselves aren't straightforward. As I played the game, I could tell that the devs were getting better with its map design. The beginning of the game is almost simplistic in map design, which is probably intentional. You have to start a new player out easy. But as the game goes along, you'll start getting into these big rooms that branch off into different pathways. However, these different pathways always sort of loop around to where you need to go. I never found myself getting lost. To explain it in a more short way, it avoided that feeling of being in invisible hallway corridors the whole game. But at the same time, it still encourages you to explore. One of the things you may find is an upgrade. These upgrades really enforce player expression. Not two people are going to play the game the same way. By the end of the game, this is what my skill tree was looking like. I didn't have everything unlocked. This is because you need blood crystals to unlock that slot, but once you've done that, you can swap back and forth how you feel, so you can experiment. You can also easily reset these whenever you want. Tier 1 is usually something basic, your weapon does more damage, or you can hold more ammo in reserve. Tier 2 is usually something along the lines of your shotgun shoots faster, or you have less of a cooldown on your katana or bow. Tier 3 is when things start going wild. Some of these change your gun entirely. That double barrel shotgun you have, now this just fires a laser line in front of you, and you don't even have to reload after a single shot, so weapon swapping is even more busted now. Those dual-wielding MAC-10s, they're now dual-wielding miniguns. Yep, that got rid of near half of this boss's health that fast. This is balanced in by the fact that this game's BFG basically shares ammo with your SMG and pistols, so you don't have a ton of ammo to do this all the time. Basically, this game allows the player to experiment in the way they want, no matter how fun or busted it may seem at face level, and does a surprisingly good job balancing it in. Oh, also there is slow motion. I would forget I had this fairly often. I mainly really used it as a bailout. But yeah, there's bullet time. Outside of the campaign, they've added what they call Guardian mode. This is basically a tower defense horde mode. It's surprisingly in-depth. I expected a horde mode where enemies just run at you and then you have like 30 seconds between waves to kind of get ready for the next one. But no, you have a main crystal in the middle you need to defend, and as you're killing enemies, you get currency. This currency you use to buy certain things, including even something to defend the crystal. It's not revolutionary, but it is surprisingly well done. Fulcrum describes Dread Templar as Quake meets Doom. And I don't know if I 100% enjoy that description, because people might write it off as just another boomer shooter. In their defense, they're not really wrong. This really is like Quake meets Doom Eternal. However, that's only at surface level. Playing this game feels totally unique at the end of the day, especially once it gets going with all your upgrades and weapons and enemies. It's also a good PC release. There's plenty of options. I ran at like minimum of 300 FPS. I never had a single crash. It should work for anyone. The graphics are retro, so it's not exactly demanding, but at the same time, I don't know, this looks different than other retro games. It almost reminds me more of an early Unreal mod like Killing Floor as far as graphics go than, say, a 90s retro shooter. It also helps that not everything is brown and gray. It's got a good color palette. What's most impressive to me is that this entire game is made by just these people. This is the entire credits. That is your dev team. If you take a look further, it seems that most of this work was done by a single person. I genuinely struggled to come up with negatives about this game. There was only one time I wasn't enjoying myself. There will be alternate secret paths. They're usually just a combat encounter and you'll get a blood crystal at the end, but occasionally there's almost a mini game. Avoid these stones rolling down at you, for example. One of these was ride on this rail car and shoot the things out of the way before you die. This is very trial and error and it was very annoying, but when an alternate side path that gives you something extra that you can beat in 30 seconds is the biggest complaint you have, yeah, this is a pretty good game. It's only $20, and again, it's coming out tomorrow. I would highly recommend. Huge thanks to Fulcrum for giving me access to this game and sponsoring this video. As a reminder, I have channel memberships. You can click that join thing down there next to the subscribe button if you want to check that out. And my Twitch is also in the bottom right if you want to come follow me over there. Thank all of you for watching this video, and I'll see you next time.